Joining me is former Liberal advisor David Gazzard and Liberal Party Vice President Teena McQueen. Welcome to you both. Now, first, Liberal MP Warren Entsch has hit out at Indigenous leader and advocate for the Voice, Noel Pearson, claiming there is little to show for his policy projects, which have been funded by the taxpayer to the tune of over $550 million. Here's what Entsch had to say in Parliament.
Noel has been in the government's payroll for decades, advising and influencing Indigenous policy. And I say to the government, do we really need the architect of so many policy failures involved in producing another one?
Warren Entsch has claimed that the communities which have ignored Pearson's Indigenous policy experiments, his words, not mine, are faring far better than those who have enacted alternative policies. Now, Teena, Warren Entsch also pointed out that Noel Pearson has never stood for election. How much of the push for the Voice is about vested interests locking in funding streams?
Oh, a lot of it, I think. And look, Warren Entsch is passionate about Indigenous affairs and where the money goes to. It's an awful lot of money if it's not producing results, Amanda. And he's got a point. If you're not an elected representative, you know, you have no right to receive this constant flow of funding for failures. So I think it's got to be closely looked at. There's so much waste on Indigenous things that just don't work. So it's got to look closely at it, but he's got a very good point. Warren wouldn't make these statements unless he was absolutely certain of what he's talking about, Amanda.
And very few people, as you say, know the needs of Aboriginal communities better than Warren Entsch, who takes care of that entire Cape York Peninsula area and has done for a long time. Susan Ley has warned Albanese that Labor might be rushing to failure by ramming through the current Voice to Parliament proposal. David, Susan Ley has pleaded with Labor to cooperate with the coalition and come to sort of an agreement about the legislation being proposed. But if voters are being told to vote yes because supposedly it's the right thing to do, that's essential, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting. Despite the fact, and I agree with you, voters are being, overwhelmingly told by big business and sporting codes and a whole range of other interests that are in this space that are positioning themselves around what they're saying, support for the Voice is gradually declining. So I think there's an inherent suspicion about people being told how to vote. And I think part of it is the structure of what's going on with the referendum where, unlike previous attempts to change the Constitution, there's been no constitutional convention. There is an asymmetrical funding model set up around educating Australians around the question that they're facing. And there's been this barrage of, criticism for those who are even thinking about voting the other way around, leading to a point where, the Prime Minister was almost like Hillary Clinton calling people who weren't on the same wavelength as her as deplorable. So, I think Australians will make up their own mind on this, and gradually the tide is moving away from support. So, if we're going to achieve any kind of recognition, it's probably better done historically with both major parties in lockstep. Otherwise, history shows that when the two major parties don't agree, the referendum fails.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's been a barrage of pro-voice messaging, but the research shows from Roy Morgan that just 46% of Australians say they intend to vote yes. The number of undecided voters has grown from 3 percentage points to 18%. David, Australians, as you've observed, don't like those in positions of power telling them what to do or sneering at them. Will Australians become more sceptical of the Voice if Labor continues to withhold crucial information from them about how it's going to operate in practice?
Yeah, I think that's right, but there's a whole range of other things. I mean, the Parliament today was a good example of this. I don't think people really well understand what the Voice is trying to achieve. And it certainly hasn't been explained to them some of the risks with the Voice, and this is what's gradually trickled out, the power to executive government, et cetera, et cetera. That's been sort of airbrushed away. But I think where the government is going to lose the focus on the voice is there are other pressing concerns that are occupying Australians, like the cost of living, for instance, with inflation jumping again today, interest rates rising. They're in danger of losing it with people just sick of hearing about the voice and when they've got more pressing concerns to their family and discussion around the kitchen table. So, sort of they'll lose if they're not careful by people, not really wanting to focus on the voice when it's all the government wants to talk about.
And Amanda, the Prime Minister won't budge on this. He's not willing to compromise. So I think it's doomed for failure.
Teena, isn't it awfully self-indulgent for the government to be pushing this every day of the week, funding it really quite generously in the circumstances, while at the same time failing to deliver on the cost of living relief that is really making Australians hurt right now?
Well, that's right. As David said, most Australians have more important things to worry about than this. It's very low. The voice is very low on their list of priorities, and they are onto the fact that this may change a great deal of things, and changing it in the Constitution. So, yes, pushing the yes and saturating the communities with this message they're pushing back. Australians aren't stupid, Amanda.